I felt like having a relationship would save me, like a rescue sort of mode, and I was thinking really irrational, but for some reason, that's what I was thinking. If I have a relationship, everything will be solved, and, obviously, that's not the way it worked.
And like I said, I appreciate you talking about some of this. I'm sure I'm talking about complicated and difficult things, right?
Yeah,
But it's one thing to want a relationship. It's another thing with a relationship with a child.
I know.
Can you tell me?
Man, these excuses never get old. We're about to watch a parole hearing for a man out of the state of Utah for his not his first time getting caught trying to solicit a child. Now, we're going to watch a quick newsreel of the offense when he was initially caught in 2014, and then we're going to jump into the full parole hearing.
Pleasant Grove police have arrested a Juab County man for trying to meet up with a 13-year-old girl through Craigslist. Police say Clelon Ames posted an ad on the site looking for young girls. When an undercover officer responded to the ad, posing as the 13-year-old, investigators say Ames responded with an email requesting pictures. Police say eventually these emails turned inappropriate. Ames was arrested when he showed up for a planned meeting with the girl. Court records show Ames has been convicted in the past of solicitation crimes.
And there you have it. Now, let's jump in and I'll unpack it with all the details at the end.
And I would note you have support here. I'll state that for the record, and the board will know as well. Okay.
Okay.
So it looks like an original hearing happened in June of 2016,
Yeah.
and a rehearing was ordered for now with sex offender treatment memo, which we'll also be discussing. Does that sound procedurally correct, sir?
That's as I remember, yeah.
Okay. So tell me about your offenses in general. You may have gone over them individually at the original hearing. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to ask you for any insight into your offenses.
Um, the major offense was to solicit an underage girl for sexual contact through using Craigslist. And what I thought I was dealing with a girl, 13 years old, that was one of the police officers in Pleasant Grove. And then that led to my arrest when I went to meet her.
So obviously, sir, I understand that you were not talking to someone who was
Yeah.
underage.
Yeah,
But
I believed I was at the time.
But you're admitting, yeah, you believed you were. So obviously that's concerning, right?
Yeah,
Because it could have been.
it could have been, yes.
So anything you want to say about that?
At this point, I'm glad there was an intervention that even though it's led to prison at this point, it's really showed me how to deal with the emotional crises that was going on that led up to that. And
Can you
through the
expand on that? What do you mean by that?
well, for example, the whole stress cycle, you know, like offense cycle, how you begin to think about doing something stupid. You have the reasons for it, you have the excuses for it, and it eventually leads you down into a path of doing something that you shouldn't do. Through the therapy, I've really learned how to counteract that, to step back and say, oh no, this is not something I need to do. This is going to cause problems for me, could cause problems for someone else. And that's really been a major plus for me going through the therapy program.
It's good.
Yeah. I actually have dreams about that. It's really weird, but I will
You have
put
dreams about what?
about being in a situation where it could lead to a trouble. And in the dream, I'll talk myself out of it. So I've really internalized that. At least that's what it seems to me. If I'm dreaming about it in the middle of the night, something's clicking, something's staying.
Which is good, but I still want a little more expansion on what was going on at the time, because you're talking about you mentioned a crisis. So what?
Yeah, I was taking care of my elderly mother, and she was getting dementia. She'd had a couple of hospital stays, and it was getting really difficult to be, you know, everything for her, cleaning, cooking. Plus, when the money started running out, I was only marginally employed at the time, so there was not a lot of money. And the bills started mounting, and I was just in a state of absolute panic. And what I was looking for was, I felt like having a relationship would save me, like a rescue sort of mode. And I was thinking really irrational, but for some reason, that's what I was thinking. If I have a relationship, everything will be solved. And obviously that's not the way it worked.
And like I said, I appreciate you talking about some of this. I'm sure I'm talking about complicated and difficult things, right?
Yeah,
But it's one thing to want a relationship. It's another thing with a relationship with a child.
I know.
Can you tell me a little bit more about that and any insight you have into your risks?
At the time I was thinking like, so with the situation at home, I was doing things and things looked hopeless and I didn't feel like I was being appreciated. And so I was looking for a relationship where somebody would be able to look up, they would look up to me as a, you know, a positive figure, as, you know, something that was doing something. And I just wasn't getting that at home. And so I started going on Craigslist looking for these relationships with all kinds of people. And some of them were adults, this one happened to be a child. Well, you know, I believed I was talking to a child, and there was a children that I thought would really look up to me as kind of a positive figure. And I think that's where my thinking was at the time.
So what would you say your risks are moving forward that you have to make sure you deal with and identify?
Doing something where I feel like I'm actually making a difference in, you know, the lives of people, a positive difference, and something I really believe in that really gives me a feeling of fulfillment. You know, and you know, it's nice to be appreciated once in a while too. But I think my biggest risk factor would be finding myself in a situation that feels really hopeless, where I'm not making any headway, where nothing is going well, and not on my account, but like feeling like the world is collapsing on me. And I think that's probably my biggest risk factor in overcoming how I would deal with that.
And how do you think you would deal with that now? Because I'm sure there are stressors, right? I mean,
Yeah.
moving forward.
Having a good support network, and through Mike, I believe, you know, he's mentioned in several letters that, you know, he knows a lot of people that he could introduce me to, and that will be the beginning of a much wider support network than I have right now. And then my others, Nick Castleton down in Eureka, he's been my power of attorney guy. He's been really helpful and supportive, and you know, he's somebody I could turn to as well.
It's good. Sounds like you've thought about that, which is good.
Yeah.
The other offense I show is you had pictures of children.
Yeah.
Anything you want to say about that, sir?
I just thought, you know, I was like, have an issue with pornography, and as that relates to trying to, you know, meet this 13-year-old girl, it kind of goes along with kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Exacerbating or amplifying that offense. So you got the pictures to look at, and then, you know, it plays back and forth psychologically. I'm not sure if I can put it into words exactly, but I'm hoping you get the picture.
Yeah, and if I, you know, sometimes
Reinforcing is the word I'm looking for.
and I think I understand, because I definitely want to clarify. I don't want to misinterpret you. So I think what you're saying is that at the time, the offenses kind of went hand in hand, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah, one reinforced the other, and then it's like a feedback loop, sort of.
when you kind of identified those risks, now you plan on dealing with them moving forward, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So those are the offenses for which the board has jurisdiction. But going over your criminal history also show an aggravated exploitation of prostitution. Can you tell me about that offense, sir?
That was 94
Yeah.
January, I believe. And that was I'd been dealing with the prostitutes on and off for about a couple of years. And I asked one of them to set me up with an underage girl. And that's what led to that arrest. It turned out she was an informant for the Salt Lake City Police Department, and she arranged for this meeting, which turned out to be, you know, I was arrested at that point in a hotel room.
So, and I want to make sure we have enough time to get to the sex offender treatment memo. But obviously, you know, that shows a history, right? Now,
Yeah.
you have the current offenses, and then you have a history of sex offenses with children. I mean, I understand that there was an informant, there was a police officer.
Yeah.
That's concerning, right? So
Mhm.
what do you think's different now?
What is different now is I can see how harmful that would have been to a minor. And looking back on an event that happened to me when I was 14, I've never really processed it, but I'm beginning to, and I can see how that is really would affect somebody else as a sexual assault. And I've been able to process that and put that in context with my behavior, and to where I can better understand it. I'm still processing this event that happened when I was 14, but it's kind of coming up to the surface as a more understandable event.
And if you do not want to discuss what you're talking about, sir, you don't have to. This is being recorded live
Yeah.
stream. You said something about when you were 14, and if you don't want to discuss, what are you referring to?
Oh, when I was in high school, I was down in the locker room, and 4 guys that were older than me assaulted me, wrapped a towel around my eyes, pulled me around by my wrists, and tried to ram a pop bottle in my eyes. And I just completely blanked that out and never really thought about how that affected me. And I'm starting to kind of process that now after all these years. We're talking like 1973 or 4, 72, something like that. It's quite a while ago.
And thank you for sharing that with me, sir. All right, I want to make sure we get to the sex offender treatment memo. First of all, before I get into specifics, what'd you think of it?
I'm actually enjoying it.
The program?
Yeah.
Okay. And but in regard to the actual treatment memo where it assessed your risk and everything, what did you think of that?
I don't see myself, there's something about violence there. I don't see myself doing anything violent. And I think that stems from the incident in 14. Violence and sex is just something that really makes me sick to my stomach. It's just something I cannot really wrap my head around. It just makes me ill. And other violent acts, I'm really not a violent person. I just don't like violent movies. So I know, I think that might have been a little, misconstrued or misunderstood on that.
Okay. So it did assess you as average risk, sir.
Yeah.
It noted that at times you speak objectively about his sexual offense, focusing on how his life history and stress forced him his problematic behaviors, and that currently your feedback is kind of tangential and self-serving. I'm quoting what they said, okay, and that that present barriers make it difficult to gauge exactly what he is gaining from being in sex offender treatment. It did note you were in sex offender treatment and that your estimated date of completion is mid-August.
Yeah.
I guess what would you say about some of that stuff? Do you think you're really actively participating and learning a lot?
I believe I am. And I saw like Sassine, he's on, leave right now. And Mackenzie has taken over, and she read that, and Mackenzie had a different opinion of that. I don't know if she's included that, but she had a different opinion, that she didn't see that behavior the way I was interacting in the group since she's took over in Sassine's absence.
Okay.
And I thought it was it surprised me when Mackenzie read that to me.
And so what I have is that, right? So that's why I'm asking you,
Yeah.
because I want to hear what you have to say. Do you know if you still have an estimated completion of mid-August of this year?
That's what Sassine said before he went on leave, and I'm figuring mid-August to mid-September, because you never know. You're gonna have people that don't show up sometimes, or any time event that shuts everything down for a while. So I'm thinking more like the middle of September.
Okay, thank you for that. Sorry, we note you have no disciplinary violations, which is really good. Regarding your release plans, according to your board packet, you said you weren't sure where you would live. Is that still kind of your?
Right now, yeah. I'm working on that. Mr. McCanish has said that he can kind of help me get into the old home inn, and the guy with the LDS volunteers, what's his name?
It's
Older
okay if
guy.
you don't know his name, sir.
Yeah, Dick Moore, I think. He's gonna help me get into a place too. He said once I saw the board and had some more definite information, then to get back with him, and he would work with me on that.
Do you think you may need a halfway house for transition, or?
Personally, I don't think I would need a halfway house. I've got a little bit of money where I can fall back on until I can get a job. And I think that would be better for me just to jump into society. And Mike said he could be a transitional, figure in that as well on the outside. Because he lives here in Salt Lake, and and I've got another friend here in Salt Lake, Dan Field, that could help on that too.
Do you have any plans for treatment if
Oh.
you were paroled?
I do have been accepted by a couple places, and I recently got some more I sent to them, and I don't know if they sent these letters to you, but
I don't.
these are
Is
just
that Alpha Counseling?
see, there was Alpha, but they're only in Ogden now. I don't know if you know that. And then there's Alliance Treatment Center and Suncrest Counseling. And an update on those, I sent out like 7 letters to these different things that are on the tablet for the sex offender. 4 of them came back as address change, no forwarding address.
So just so you know, we're the board. We don't run the tablet plan program. The department.
Yeah, but I just wanted to make you aware of that.
But I appreciate that information, and maybe I
it's
can find somebody
frustrating.
to relay that information to.
Yeah, I've talked to my caseworkers a couple times so far. Nothing has been done, and I talked to Mackenzie about that Tuesday as well. Let her know, so maybe she'll be able to get that updated on the tablet.
Okay.
I hope so, because it's really frustrating for people to get letters sent back.
Okay. And like I said, I mean, I'll try to figure out who I can inform of that, so maybe it can be a change, because obviously, if I know as a hearing officer, I appreciate hearing that you're actively looking into treatment, right? And if you can't contact the treatment,
What good's the point even trying?
But I appreciate that you're looking into that, and obviously it sounds like you have, so that's really good.
And that's for everybody else too that's looking into it.
For sure. All right, sir, and I would note the board received letters of support. I reviewed them. The board will have access to them. Okay.
Okay.
All right, so those are all of my questions. From here, I'm a hearing officer. I make recommendations. The board ultimately decides. They're made up of 5 members. 3 of them have to come to one decision. That's the decision of the board. You should get that in writing within 2 to 4 weeks. Your family members, your friends, anyone listening to this hearing via video can go to bop.utah.gov. As soon as we have the decision, we post it on our website. Just so you know, it still takes some time, even on the website, but it's faster on the website than the mail. So someone can tell you what that decision is while you're waiting for the written one.
Okay.
Sir, I make note of your guideline, which is 218 months or July 14th, 2032.
Oh, when I got with the first hearing back in 16, a few weeks later, I got a pink slip with a column and a lot of checks and numbers on it. And it said my matrix is 124 months.
Okay, so do you?
I don't have a copy. I sent that out quite a while ago, that copy, but it said 124 months, 8-year rehearing, expected release date 1 year after. So it'd be like May 2025.
I'm sorry, how many months were you previously told? 124 months?
124, yeah. And it said expected release date May of 2025.
Well, unless the board orders it. So the guideline, even if you are correct, sir, and I will have it looked into, just so you know, we have a whole department that deals with the guideline. That's just a suggestion, right? That doesn't, the board can go below that date. They can go above that date, the same date they ultimately decide. But obviously, I do want to make sure that that guideline is correct. So like I said, I will have our department look into that deals with that. And when you get your decision, it'll probably address that issue of the guideline as well, okay? Do you have any closing comments or questions for myself or for the board, sir?
Right now, as far as employment I'm looking into, I have had, I wouldn't say any promises, but there's some promising leads that I've been, from some people up at Utah State University said they could forward me to some jobs that are like related to my degree in ecology, forestry. And with the upcoming water conservation thing, I've had a lot of experience doing that with like consulting and native plant xeriscaping. And I'm looking to work into that. And I've got a few leads on that as well from Utah Valley or Jordan Valley Water Conservancy District actually invited me to look into them, to contact them when I got out. So like I said, it's promising, but no promises.
Okay. But it still sounds like you're looking into it, which is good. All right, sir. I've made notes of all of your comments today. We'll go ahead and conclude. Thank you so much for coming to this hearing.
And do you want these letters too?
I'll have the officer scan them and then you can keep them, but
Oh, okay.
I'll put it in the file.
Okay, thank you.
All right, spin around for just a second, say a quick word.
So Utah granted his parole. They granted his parole effective October 22, 2024. So at the time of this recording, that's in 4 months. Man, I mean, they certainly are doing a good job keeping their constituency safe. This is the second time that he was caught soliciting a child. And as you can see from his hearing, he just doesn't get it. I mean, even throughout his parole hearing, it's just making an excuse after first, lying about the age. Oh, it's 14, not 13, which is, like it even makes a difference. But we always see those type of, discrepancies. And we'll go over the report of how he was caught. And I think it's quite fascinating how dumb this guy is. The detectives that actually caught him recognize his email address because he used the same email in 2014 that he did in 1994, if you can believe that. So, Richard put together just so he could understand how it all worked because of how many sentences he had. But, so his release is contingent that he completes his sex offender treatment program, which, we only have to assume he will. It's interesting because he has like a full term date of like over 100-year sentence, but he would, so Richard has it all written down here. I'll share the screen with you. And thank you, Richard, for doing this because it is confusing. So release is contingent upon completing his SOT. The board considered the program completion positive progress and on compliance, good behavior. The code limits certain consecutive sentences to 30 years. So the board has determined that your sentences as currently imposed are subject to 30 years statutory limit. The sentence expiration date will remain consistent with the sentence in order by the court. So basically what, again, it's more smoke and mirrors by Utah, because when you look at his actual, full term date, he's not to get out for another basically 100 years. But that's just not the way it actually works in reality. It's again smoke and mirrors and just like a scam by the Utah system. The maximum he was actually allowed to serve is 30 years, not 100+ years. And anyways, he's getting out on parole after, it seems, 10-year sentence, which, you might argue is still quite a long time for these type of sting operations. We see people in Utah get a fraction of these sentences for actually being successful in harming a child. But there's no way of getting around it that he is dangerous. This is his obsession. This is what he loves to do. And so this is about him getting caught for the 13-year-old girl. So the girl, however, was an undercover police officer. And so Ames, 57 years ago, was arrested and booked in Utah County Jail for investigation of enticing of a minor. On April 9th, a Pleasant Grove police officer conducting an undercover investigation came across an online on Craigslist for a man looking for young girls, according to police affidavit. So remember, he puts it up on Craigslist and says, specifically, I want young girls. That's how smart this guy is. The officer responded to the ad by posing as a 13-year-old girl. The affidavit states that he allegedly began sending the girl emails on an account that an officer said he recognized as an email used in another undercover operation he was involved with. See that? How he uses the same email from 1994? Or is it a different operation? I don't know. Paul began emailing asking for pictures of me. Paul continued to email me asking where I was and what I was doing, the affidavit states. On Thursday, Ames sent the girl an email saying he was in Spanish Fork and asked to know where she was. I told him I was in school, the officer replied. He asked what school and wanted to know what time school gets out. He also asked if I was wearing something that showed my legs. I asked what he wanted to do. He said he wanted to stare at my legs. He later said he hadn't kissed or touched anyone in a long time. As the emails continued, Ames said he wanted to perform sexual acts on the girl, according to the affidavit. The undercover officer agreed to meet Ames at Park Spanish Fork. In the meantime, the officer found Ames at a coffee shop and followed him. I conducted surveillance and watched him leave after he said he was on his way. I conducted a loose follow and observed him circle to the park looking for someone. He then pulled into a parking stall directly in front of the area they were to meet, the officer wrote. Ames was arrested in the park after he was taken into custody, the officer said. He told me how lonely he was and how he talks to anybody online. Utah court records show that he was convicted of a misdemeanor sex solicitation. That's why it's only a misdemeanor they gave him in 1991. Can you imagine? In 94, he was convicted of 2 counts of aggravated exploitation of a prostitute, and a sodomy on a child charge was dismissed. Wow. So he commits sodomy on a child and they dismissed it. It's insane. He was placed on probation, which he successfully completed in 96. He was given probation. And if one thinks that he didn't have other crimes in all that in the decade until then, I think you have to be in denial or just blind, or maybe as wantonly blind as the Utah Department of Corrections that is there to protect us, or I should say the DA, the judges. And they let him out again. And you listen to the hearings. I mean, he really describes it as, well, I wanted a relationship. Well, I thought that younger people could look up to me. I mean, there's no, and you hear the reports, there's no accountability. It's like it's the classic Roach mindset. But again, what's most terrifying is the system that should clearly understand this, should clearly know that he can't be fixed by programs, that he is a danger to society. The only saving grace for us is that he's just dumb. I mean, he's really, really dumb. But and hopefully they'll catch him again. But it's his obsession. And to think that he's not going to, in the rest of his lifetime, find another way to engage in his obsession, it's just lunacy. He's going to have nothing to do with all the time that he's going to have, except obsess about how he can accomplish his goal without getting caught this time.